Spectrovision Radio.
Welcome to Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs. I'm Jordan, your devout Mormon heretic, but I'm not alone. I have two co-hosts who I would love to introduce you to.
My name is Tom, but I really want you to meet Mallory, who's like a numinous being with glasses and who's the most relatable lady.
Aww.
Yeah.
That's me. I'm Mallory, relatable lady. And Tom is an author and he's a musician. He's a magnet for weird phenomena. And he tells the story like there's a crackling fire right next to you all the time. And you're going to love him.
This is a show about liminal spaces. As cracks in the facade of our consensus reality get bigger, we're here to try to see what's on the other side. Minus all the boring parts, of course.
And there's not going to be anything boring in this episode. It's jam-packed. We're going to get into the headlines, which is mostly about this spate of so-called drone sightings in the United States lately. We have an interview, too, with Kelly Chase, the host of the extremely popular UFO Rabbit Hole podcast.
And then we're going to hear from our very own Tom, who had a mind-bending experience just a couple of days ago. And after that, we're going to get AI's take on UAPs. What does the aggregate of all the knowledge of the internet think is going on with all the weird shit in the sky? That's the question.
But first, Tom, give us the headlines.
I'm not sure what's been happening, but we do know that something's been happening. Over the past several weeks in late 2024, apart from general world-ending sort of, events, there have been a spate, not to say a flap, of sightings of what people are calling drones or mystery drones. They have blinking lights, multicolored lights. Some of them are the size of cars. Some of them drift very slowly. Many of these things show up in clusters. They hover for a long time. They've been seen over Department of Defense facilities and other sensitive areas. They've been seen over key infrastructural things like, bridges. It's causing some concern. In typical fashion, the Pentagon has shown up and said, we don't know what they are. It's nothing to worry about, which seems like a bit of a contradiction. But, I don't remember which. I think it was Newark Airport had to shut down for a little bit. Other airports have had to shut down. France is talking about rolling out new technology based on aerial threats. The FBI received well over 5,000 reports. Now, these are people who actually called the FBI about this. And of those, the FBI says there's maybe 100 or something that they're actually following up. And there's a lot of dismissive language that we've heard in the past about lights in the sky. It's a star, it's a comet, it's a satellite, it's an airplane, it's hobbyists, and there are a lot of drones in the United States. But suffice to say that this has been very active in the past several weeks, and people are wondering about it. I want to know, Mallory and Jordan, what you guys think.
I had to look up what a UFO flap was. And a UFO flap is a rash of reports of unidentified airborne objects. Flap, originally a military term used to describe a period of panic or chaos, is used by ufologists to describe surges of sightings in a geographical area. So we're experiencing a flap, boys and girls.
That is what's happening.
I mean, these sightings are all over the map. I'm learning that congressmen say the darndest things. I am very curious about that you brought up this sort of, hey, we don't know what this is, but we're safe for sure.
Don't worry about it.
Thanks, government.
There's no problem. I mean, it was the 12th when the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI released their joint statement, basically saying we have no evidence at this time that the reported drone sightings pose a national security or public safety threat or have a foreign nexus. But then there's a drone ban on the 19th, which is the governor, again, of New York says there's no threat. This is just precautionary. It's okay, but you're banning drones. And is that just, here's the thing, it could just be to make the public feel better. Like, we need there to be less drones in the sky. Whatever yahoos are flying these drones around because of this flap. We need it to calm down. But it also sort of seems like we need to figure out what this is because we don't know.
Yeah.
And that's very stressful.
In general, the way that the government communicates with people about this stuff is just so bad and has burned so much trust that it just opens up this wide lane for conspiracy theories and fear and confusion. And then they consistently not only fail to make it better, but like ardently make it worse. None of the theories make much sense to me right now, other than the one, which is this idea of it being some sort of case of mass hysteria. I don't love that explanation, and I'd like to talk more about that later, but it seems like a lot of the accounts are from people who aren't necessarily vulnerable to mass hysterical kind of responses, like people who are just like, listen, I'm just trying to figure out what this thing I saw is. Like, I don't know. I'm not trying to like say the world's ending or like claiming that aliens are invading. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. And part of me, frankly, I just feel a little bit of FOMO, like the girl that didn't get invited to the dance. Like, more and more people are seeing UFOs, and I've never seen a single thing in the sky that I feel like I couldn't explain. So like, that must be so exciting. And I believe there's all kinds of stuff that we can't explain in the sky, but like, I've never personally seen it. Like, what does that make me? I don't know. Gullible by extension? I don't know. I
didn't know what Starlink was. And then there was a day where I saw it in the sky and I was like, this is it. Finally, I'm like filming it. You can hear me in the video going, what the fuck? I was like freaking out. And it was so disappointing to discover that it was nothing special at all.
It is so disappointing.
I mean, let's just go ahead and accept that some of these are civilian aircraft. Some of them are hobbyists, flying their drones or whatever. Absolutely. But to dismiss it all as, it's Venus or whatever. I mean, we've heard this for so many decades.
One of the very interesting things to me about this flap that doesn't seem to match very closely to some other more historical accounts is that the sightings themselves don't appear to be describing things that are completely bizarre. And I think that if you saw the exact same thing we're seeing today, 20 or 30 years ago, it'd be very strange because we didn't have ubiquitous technology that would allow these kinds of sightings. It wouldn't have made sense to see an object move the way that a drone moves because there weren't drones everywhere. I think that it's a reasonable thing to at least not to assume that this is the right answer, but this is a plausible explanation that somebody saw some drones they didn't expect to see. And then it got reported. And then a lot of other people started looking up when they wouldn't have been looking up otherwise and started looking for things that were maybe not right. That were maybe a little bit surprising or unexpected. And then they started seeing more drones that they wouldn't have seen. And then it just kind of goes on and on. And so I think that's a pretty plausible explanation. I wouldn't say that we have proof that that's the truth, but I think that that's at least a direction you could go if you're looking for the least complicated explanation for what's been happening in terms of this quote unquote mass hysteria or UFO flap.
I listened to Hank Green's take on this a couple of days ago, and he brought up the transition from UFO to UAP. Mm-hmm. I thought he made a good point. He said, we've done that because UFO means aliens now. It means aliens.
Right.
And so we have to change a word where it was like, no, the whole point was that we don't know what this is. It wasn't that it's aliens. But now UFO means aliens. So we can't call it a UFO, even though it is a UFO. It's an unidentified flying object.
Exactly. That brings me to this idea that I've heard lots of things where people are like, it's Chinese, whatever. It's right. terrestrial, Russian. But it's a foreign adversary thing, or it's some psyops by our own government. Or I heard somewhere that there is a competition between human-made UFOs and non-human intelligence-made UFOs, and there's some sort of terrific struggle that's happening that is now and you know what? I have no idea. I think it's worth noting that it is in the consciousness. It is in the public consciousness, and there's a reason for that, apart from the fact that it is evidently happening. And we could riff on that all day long. I do think people are sort of hoping for a new age. I think people are hoping for something that is beyond, as you said in the introduction, Jordan, beyond this awful sort of awful materialism that is dragging everybody down and limiting our potential.
Well, I think that's a pretty good segue to a slightly broader conversation about what UFOs are, have been, have represented, et cetera. It's not necessarily super possible to create a holistic gestalt of what UFOs are because they defy categorization sort of by nature. And if you look back in the last 100 or so years of ubiquitous UFO type accounts, there's so many differences. So to try to summarize the topic would be pretty much impossible. But one thing we can say with pretty near certainty at this point is that they exist in the sense of there are things that have flown around that people have seen, witnessed, and often documented with film that are not identifiable by anybody, or at least anybody that is credible to the public conscience. Right. So is there a chance that there are government agencies or operatives within government agencies or intelligence agencies that actually do know what some of these things are? Of course there's a chance. But as far as like what we know, like on the ground, the answer is no, like we don't know. So they remain unidentified. And they are bizarre beyond description. This most recent flap, like we've been talking about, is less bizarre. And I think this was one of the reasons it's breaking into the news so massively is because it feels so close to having an explanation. Whereas some of the sightings in the past have so wildly defied explanation that to a large degree, I think a lot of people just say, I don't know what to do with this. And then you just forget about it. And I've had this experience too. I don't know. I'm actually curious if you guys have had this experience of hearing about accounts, seeing a lot of compelling evidence for certain things having been seen that are so strange that within maybe a day or two or a week, you kind of just forget that you heard it because it doesn't make any sense. You can't connect it to anything.
There's a term for that. Supernatural apathy.
Oh, I love
it's so
that.
often the case that people will talk about, say, if they have a paranormal experience that's quite extraordinary, right? They see an apparition or something like that, and they'll just roll over and go back to sleep. Like they'll just be a part of them that is just, you just need things to be normal. And you cannot process whatever the hell that thing was, We're not really into being foundationally shaken up all the time.
It makes you wonder if there's an evolutionary reason for it, that like if we were to just make these quantum leaps every day or year, would we be able to properly evolve as a species? I don't know. Instead, we're forced into these baby steps, and then certain people seem to be making these quantum leaps and nobody believes them.
I think you're exactly right.
That's a great take. How we respond to the topic of UFOs or UAP, no matter which of the countless accounts we're discussing, even this one is almost more meaningful than the objective substance of the accounts themselves. It seems like the purpose of UFOs or UAP or whatever, if there is one, which that's a big debate, is to shatter our certainties. And around every instance, people tend to fall into one of two categories. Those who take a step back and do their best to observe and learn and try to open up and understand, while acknowledging the inherent impenetrability of this mystery, and those who stubbornly cling to explanations that will preserve their worldviews, no matter how baseless those explanations are. And one of the reasons I love talking to you guys is because I feel like we fall into the first category, or at least try to stay in the first category and not sort of settle into the second category of clinging to consistent worldviews despite what Tom loves to refer to as the Fordian damned data.
Yeah, that's Charles Ford.
Yes.
The damned data. Yes, it marches on. It marches on.
Every day, every year.
Every day.
And the damned data, that refers to the data that will be ignored because it doesn't follow the mainstream, correct?
It does not. It does not fit into materialistic paradigms. And so people will say that did not happen because it could not happen. We have to remember that to a great extent, the information that's being disseminated to us to a certain degree is being mediated.
Yes.
And the mediating entities, whatever media, whatever you want to call it, tends to be sort of centralized, corporatist, and working within an algorithmic structure that prioritizes fear. So you're going to get a lot of things of like, strange things are being seen in the sky. How can that kill you?
Yes.
Why should you be afraid of that? Are the evil Chinese people involved?
Why is this a threat against our national security?
Why is
what
the
measures
deep
should be
state
taken?
Hiding information from the beleaguered, meat-eating Americans? It's foolishness. And you have to be really vigilant against misinformation, disinformation, and people who would use something like this to, I don't know, profit from you.
To make you buy supplements.
Yeah, basically.
Yes. There was more than one person interviewed who said the people deserve to know. Like the public deserves to know. And I was like, what do we deserve to know? I would be curious to your thoughts about that. Like, we didn't know when the government was taking care of a corn surplus and created high fructose corn syrup. That was not exactly good for us or our health or our safety.
Or when they lost a nuke. I don't think they were forthcoming about that.
Whoopsie.
It's interesting when you're talking about, the angles and incentives that these media outlets and then also politicians might have in trying to press our outrage button. Like, you deserve to know. And it's like, but what do I need to know about this? What am I unsafe? Should I panic? Will it help if I panic? I mean, I'm just curious about your thoughts.
We've seen evidence, and the government has in fact admitted and shown us evidence that there is technology that far exceeds our own that can literally fly circles around our best pilots and equipment. Therefore, we can assume that if they had wanted to kill us all, that would have been accomplished a long time ago. The other thing, though, that I think is that, like, Charles Fort said this thing about, he said that the Greeks had all of the technology to make steam engines, but they did not. Why? Because it wasn't steam engine time. And I was like, fuck me, that's genius. It wasn't steam engine time,
baby.
What I'm thinking is it's
Go
not
home, steam engines.
It's not steam engine time for us yet. Has the government known about it for a long time? Is there some spooky agreement deal? Is there some shadow Christianist part of the Pentagon that is blah blah? I don't know. But I think a lot of people suspect that it implies something much bigger and greater and more potentially engaging and interesting rather than, are we all going to die or whatever? Boring shit.
Yeah.
I think that the concept of people deserving to know anything is a misframing of a principle. Balaji Srinivasan has this great thing where he says we went from believing in God to believing in the state. That the state has become God. It's a pretty bad God, tends to abuse us and exploit us and lie to us all the time.
Pretty dumb sometimes.
Yeah, and dumb all the time.
A corruptible God.
Corrupt.
Yeah.
It's a bad God. But we tend to treat it like that, like, oh, it has the answers. And it's funny because around this topic and around especially the large topic of capital D disclosure, there's this sense that the government is this sort of agentive entity that can make decisions about what it will and won't tell its people. And it's absurd, really, because it reflects reality not pretty much at all. Of course, this stuff is happening, but is it happening in a way that can be attributed to the government in a sort of monolithic way? Absolutely not. It just doesn't make any sense to say that people deserve to know. If you ask the wrong question, you'll never get an answer because the question has no answer. It's not a real question.
I hear what you're saying. And all it does is imply that someone does know and they don't want you to know, which then becomes whatever, the deep state foolishness and some guy trying to shoot up a pizza place in New York that doesn't have a basement. But what I was intimating with respect to this sort of like the great leap of consciousness is that I think a lot of people do sort of hunger and thirst for a great leap in consciousness, and the idea that consciousness is a collective thing. It is part of all of us and it belongs to all of us. And
Absolutely.
Now I shall sit back down.
Well, I mean, I think that that's the right answer, or the right way to think about the question, is that we're not waiting for that elevation of consciousness to be mediated by some state actor where you participate in it if you want to on your own, in your own community, individually and in your family and in your community.
No intermediary, no intercessor.
Yeah, there is no one with their hand on the dial, like waiting for you to say the right thing or do the right thing or discover the right thing before they switch it on and allow you to transcend your own consciousness. Like that is a project that each of us has to undertake on our own, and each community has to kind of like figure it out. And then those communities hopefully start to become better and better connected. And I think that if we try to think in those terms and we try to organize ourselves in whatever capacity we can in our own limited spheres of influence around those ideals, we get to maybe get some answers, but they're completely unmediated.
Pursuant to that, I have a question for both of you.
Yeah.
And it has felt to me, a couple of things are evident to me, that since 2017, when the New York Times printed that thing about UFOs, and then you had several, I think, congressional oversight hearings where people in governmental or formerly of governmental agencies and Defense Department officials are openly saying, yep, this stuff is real, and here's some history with it, and intimating all kinds of stuff. And then also, very much in my opinion, I will say that I think the final sort of smash and grab of late stage capitalism is about to bloom its hideous flower. And do either of you feel like I do that given those two strange bedfellows snuggled up firmly against one another, that shit's about to get super fucking weird now?
I won't lie, I hope so. I, for a time, have subscribed to this. I don't even know how to describe them. It's a therapy group that works with people who are in grief and who are often like at the end of their lives or are helping loved ones pass on. And they did a talk about synchronicity and how often there are really strange, inexplicable things that happen at the end of people's lives. Weird miracles. People don't like that word. We can use synchronicity if people prefer it. But just inexplicable things that go down with your loved one as they're passing, whether they die the second you leave the room or you get a letter from them the day they die. Just a ton of different stories that cannot be explained. And the thing that I was so moved that they encouraged, because it was not a religiously affiliated group, but they also obviously have to deal with everyone's belief systems because they're dealing with death. And death is the great known prophecy, but completely unknown, terrifying, annihilatory thing in all of our lives every day, every second. And they said, regardless of your belief system, we encourage you to remain completely open about these synchronicities and don't be tempted to explain it with your belief system. It's very tempting to say, oh, and because my mom went to heaven, she's now talking to me with her angel, blah, blah, blah. Fill in that's a Christian thing, or over here, this is what we believe. What I was taught growing up, you can try and make sense of it, but we encourage you to stay completely open and just experience the world as vast and inexplicable. And that's what I hope we're being forced into.
I'm with you.
I think it's so exciting. And that is what's exciting to me about it, is this limitlessness. It's terrifying, but we're together. And I think we could do this. But we have to keep our eyes open, and we have to stop just saying stuff isn't happening. That's just us clinging to our scientism, our belief system, our materialism to make ourselves feel better. We can't feel better. We're all going to die. Let's just do this. Stay wide open.
You guys already know about this because I texted you almost immediately. I never wanted to see these things because honestly, they scared me. And when I would sit around and think about ghosts or whatever, it would make me scared. But whenever I had an experience with, whatever, ghosts, I wasn't scared at the time. I was just like, what the hell? What is that? So the other day, about 3:30 in the afternoon, I'm East Coast. I was at my computer and I happened to look up the window, which is just right in front of me here, facing south in the front of my house. And I saw what I took to be a seagull, which is not unusual. And then there were more of them. And I was like, oh, a flock of seagulls. And maybe, and then I saw a real seagull. And I was like, oh, Christ, that's not what these are. So I stood up. And I will try to communicate what I saw. I saw about between 15 oval-shaped, luminous, shimmering objects moving west to east in front of me, and they appeared to be intelligently controlled. They were clearly not aircraft or drones. They exhibited non-ballistic motion. They would change direction. They were shimmering. And the look of them reminded me nothing so much as light reflected on water. And they didn't appear to be in a big hurry. And I just stood there astonished because it was so plain and so mysterious and so beautiful. So at some point, as they start to move out of the window frame, I'm like, oh Christ, I need some backup. And so I ran and got my partner Emrys and ran to her office, whereupon I immediately blocked the way and still looked at them, But then Emrys was like, get out of the way. And she saw one and said that it had a dark center and it had wings, but they weren't fixed and they were kind of undulating or rotating, but not like helicopter blades. And then it shot straight up in the air, and that was that.
Well, Tom, that sounds like a UFO.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. 100% a UFO. Unidentified, aerial.
Oh, that's so
ticks
cool.
all the
And
boxes.
so weird.
Yeah.
You
and
now-
so about 10 minutes later, I just sat down and I sobbed. And it wasn't because I was frightened or upset. It honestly felt like a cleansing to me. It's very difficult to explain. I felt privileged to have seen it, if that makes any sense. I think I've been, because of all kinds of things, so full of grief, which sometimes I mistake for anger. But I've been so full of grief that I think I needed a good cry. And just like there was a college radio station where I went to school that was open format, which meant that it would often play music that I considered to be completely unlistenable. And I exulted in that. I thought it was great. I would have to turn it off because something was just so damned terrible. And I feel the same way when it's made plain to me that the world is so much more mysterious and beautiful than I can wrap my head around. So that's what this experience was. Anyway, yeah. So I got it over with. I ticked that box.
You've got the full bingo card now of supernatural
Not quite. And there's
I'm sure.
content. I'm content
How big is that
not
card?
to win the bingo game.
I think that card is as big as the universe.
Yeah.
I think your reaction's really beautiful. I think that might be the thing that strikes me the most, actually. That this idea that you can sort of sum up a lot of the things that you said you've been feeling grief, masters, anger about, actually might be healed by a larger, unlimited universe or presence. Like, to be able to actually say, perhaps my assumptions about existence are not as bleak as they seem. What a beautiful response.
You asked what we think about whether there's, frankly, an apocalypse going on. And my response is, I'm counting on it. I think that the only true terror is loneliness. And the antidote to everything is connection. I would say the antidote to death is connection. And I've gone through the dark waters of fear of death, of the belief in total annihilation. And on a certain level, you're like, well, it can't be that bad. You don't know about it, right? It's not like I'm going to know that I don't exist anymore. But there's something about that has always felt deeply out of alignment with truth or reality in the way that I experience it, in the way that I've seen others experience it. And so I am looking forward to being pressured out of my egoic isolation, because it's very hard to do. It's very hard to get out of your own ego, to get out of your own sort of self-enforced loneliness and your own scarcity mindset and your own clinging to ideas that make you feel comfortable in the moment, and to venture out into the wild and fierce and chaotic reality of the world and the universe. And I believe it is annihilating alone. Like, if we were alone, you just disappear. But if we're connected, if you and I, if we together, the three of us and our families and our communities, if we connect more and more tightly together and bring in more and more people, and other communities are doing the same thing, the end result of that is a species-wide consciousness. It is the collective consciousness. It happens sort of naturally. And the things that press it forward are the need for it. If the world presents, or the universe presents, enough challenges to your egoic isolation, you respond by either perishing or reaching out and connecting to somebody who can save you on some level. Like, help me not feel alone, just even for a minute. I believe that is what ultimately saves us.
What Mal was saying about, be open to the miracles, like, don't let any whatever orthodoxy explain it away. Stay in that place of not knowing and being open to it. And also with a deep understanding that, like, we are all of us of equal value and worth. And whoever proceeds from that place is alive. And whoever does not, let the dead bury the dead. But, like, I fully believe that if you start from that place, then true wealth and resiliency are available to each and every one of us.
Oh gosh, guys, did this get beautiful?
It might have accidentally gotten beautiful.
Did it get beautiful?
Jordan, I don't know if you practiced what you just said, but it fucking...
It is time to do that thing, Tom, that you and I actually came up with independently, and that is to invite an AI correspondent to weigh in on the topic of the day, which today is UFOs, obviously. So I spun up a chat with an AI who I have named Agnes, and we can go ahead and pose a question to her now. Tom, do you want to do the honors?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Hi, Agnes. My question is, what is your opinion with respect to the nature of UAP phenomenon? In other words, do you think it's physical or tangible? Is it interdimensional? Is it a non-human intelligence? Is it human? With the wealth of knowledge that we have about this phenomenon, what is your opinion with respect to the nature of UFOs or UAPs?
That's a fascinating question. From analyzing the available data, I find it compelling that many UAP demonstrate capabilities that appear to transcend our current understanding of physics and aerodynamics. Characteristics like instant acceleration, hypersonic speeds without sonic booms, and apparent transmedium travel between air and water. These observations come from highly trained military personnel using sophisticated sensor systems. However, I think it's crucial to acknowledge that unknown truly means unknown. While the extraterrestrial hypothesis is popular and accounts for some of the observed characteristics, it's not the only possibility. We could be observing phenomena from other dimensions, time periods, or even manifestations of consciousness itself. Possibilities that align with some quantum physics theories and ancient accounts of unusual aerial phenomena. What I find most intriguing is that UAP might represent a convergence point between the materialist and non-materialist worldviews. They're physical enough to be detected by radar and infrared sensors, yet they seem to operate outside our understanding of physical laws. This suggests we might need to expand our framework for understanding reality itself.
Hell yeah, Agnes. I love the idea that the internet is currently letting us know that this makes more sense than any more cynical assumption.
I've been really resistant to AI for a long time because, you know, I'm an artist and a musician and a writer, and what I have seen is AI being used as an intellectual property, you know, strip mining machine, basically. But the more I think about it, and the reason that I reached out to Jordan about this, and he told me he had the same idea about using an AI entity in this podcast, is that I think it's worth considering possibly as an extension of human consciousness, right? And therefore a tool that we could avail ourselves to if you accept the idea, which I think is actually the case, that, you know, Agnes has access to way more information than any of us do individually.
Yeah, I think it's at least worth considering what a large language model trained on vast quantities of human knowledge has to say. I think it's very interesting that Agnes turns out not to be a debunker. So that's cool. She's on our side, guys.
I wonder how much of it, and we'll probably do this the whole time, but I wonder how much of it is a reflection of, you know, how much Agnes says, as AI will often do, is a reflection of the user's intent.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
I strongly suspect that Agnes is telling us what we want to hear.
Right. And why my actual question, the question I really wanted to ask was Pepsi or Coke? Because then the AI would just...
I think you'd break it.
It'd break it. It would just
trillions of dollars of investment just fire, down the drain.
Like entire servers would burst into flame. It's like that thing on Star Trek when they asked the computer to compute pi to the last decimal, and it blew up.
Or what if the AI just came back and just said Coke?
It'd be right, fucker.
We know it's right.
I know. Thank you very much. I didn't need a fucking computer to tell me that.
All right, so the person I've come to trust the very most on the subject of UFOs is the woman who created the UFO Rabbit Hole podcast. I don't know of anyone who has managed to synthesize a more comprehensive perspective on this topic than she has, or who has developed a better sense of discernment to help cut through the, shall we say, bullshit. And she also happens to be humble enough to probably hate this introduction, but too bad. Welcome to the show, Kelly.
Hi, everybody. How's it going?
We're so
very
happy you're here. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
I know you've got nothing to do. You're sitting around. It's fine, Just time to burn.
This is great. I told Jordan I try to minimize the number of times a week I have to do my hair. So when I'm
Oh my gosh, preach.
Kelly, let me try to describe you to yourself like in a way like as almost like an introduction. You're a relatively recent newcomer to this community.
Yes.
And it's based on an extraordinary experience you had. And my understanding is that you began the podcast as a way of understanding it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I've only been doing this for about a little over 3 years now, and it's been a wild ride.
So here's my question. The phenomena itself is so incredible and diverse and fascinating, but what really interests me is sort of the effect that it's had on you. How have you changed in the sense of being open-minded, staying skeptical, making yourself vulnerable to it?
One of the coolest but most difficult and destabilizing, but also kind of exhilarating parts of doing this kind of work is that it gets you to a place where you start questioning everything, not just in a conspiracy theory sort of way, but like, how do we know what we know? Like, what of my knowledge do I know for a fact is correct? And recognizing how contingent most of what we know is, that there's like a very small subset of knowledge that comes from lived experience. But the vast majority of the knowledge that we get is given to us from other people. And we build our civilization and our stores of knowledge and all of these things on the idea that we're able to like basically trust the people and the institutions that we have put in charge of different pieces of our collective knowledge. And the thing about getting into the UFO is you start to realize how flimsy our hold on what reality actually is, how much the people that we've put in charge either don't know or have in some ways lost, if they ever had it, the will to really serve the people. They're usually serving some kind of other interest. And it takes you to this place where you end up questioning everything. And I think that that kind of process is extremely destabilizing, but there's also many fruits to be found in that work also, because I think that intellectual humility is something that is entirely missing in our culture. You think about, gas prices go up or milk prices go up, and suddenly everyone on the internet is an expert on how gas prices are set and who is responsible for this and who we should be going after with pitchforks, until the next day when they're given the next thing that they're supposed to be mad about, and they're an expert on that. But there isn't a lot of actual inquiry going on, and people make commitments to ideas from an ideological perspective. And once they do that, they're no longer willing to kind of consider other evidence.
Intellectual humility is going to be a takeaway for me. That's such good language. I understand why there is a resistance, right? I think people are worried about being duped. They're worried about being lied to or manipulated. What do you think the place is for skepticism when it comes to intellectual humility?
I think skepticism is probably one of the most important pieces of this. And I think that sometimes in the UFO community, that people can get really frustrated with skeptics and debunkers. I will say I think debunking is different than skepticism. Debunking goes in with the conclusion that this isn't real and then kind of works backwards from there, which is, kind of a very biased viewpoint in and of itself. But true skepticism isn't like just about criticizing something or trying to disprove something or being constantly suspicious of things. I think that true skepticism is about taking personal responsibility for your own knowledge and opinions. It's understanding that there could be flaws in your own logic, and that true skepticism and healthy skepticism starts with a healthy skepticism of yourself, of your own thoughts, of your own beliefs, of your own models and frameworks that you're bringing to the equation. And I think that when skepticism is approached in that way, that it is extraordinarily valuable. And I'm sure there are many people who would disagree, but I would still consider myself, even as an experiencer, even as someone who has encountered the UFO phenomenon and believes that it's real, I would still consider myself a skeptic, because I think that skepticism is about a mental approach to how you take things. It's not an unwillingness to accept anything beyond consensus reality.
Amen. Being open-minded that's not the same thing as gullibility, is it?
I'm interested in what And how are you finding yourself less relatable as you go deeper? Like,
Yes.
what is it harder to engage? Like, what's this process like for you?
I'm definitely way more weird. So many of the conversations that people are just having out in the world feel so scripted now. It just feels like I go out with people and everybody's like mad about the same thing that like the internet told them to be mad about that day. And it's not that I don't see the issues and the things that they're talking about. It's that I have a very different relationship now to information that is coming to me through the media, through algorithms, and, you know, how I feel about various authority structures. Just as a for instance, if you take David Grush at his word, what we're talking about here is a rogue faction of the intelligence community that is apparently overseen and governed by no one, with a functionally limitless budget that has taken control of asymmetric technology that could change the entire world. And there doesn't appear to be anything we can do about it. And so when people get all stressed out about the presidential election, it's hard to like go there.
Do you think that in the case of feeling sort of strange or unrelatable, that you might just be early, and that maybe this thing turns a corner and that people will feel more relatable when they start to experience this stuff, and that there will be more people to connect to and in closer and more meaningful ways?
I do. I really do. I think even just over the last 3 years that I've been doing this, I've seen huge changes. You know, I just put out an episode about an anomalous experience that I had that connected me to somebody else who has these like really interesting psi abilities that are kind of hard to believe. But he managed to prove in a lab that something distinct is going on with his brain state. And it took me a really long time to put that episode out because it just felt like, how do I tell people that through this string of absurd sounding synchronicities, I got connected to this guy and he's an X-Man. He's got superpowers, apparently. How do you tell that story? But then in the meantime, like the telepathy tapes has come out and there's all sorts of other conversations being had. And I feel like a story that I was afraid to tell a year ago, there's suddenly a kind of place in the culture and in the conversation for that story to take place and for people to really absorb it. And so I see it changing rapidly. I think that due to a variety of reasons, the consensus reality is kind of fraying at the seams, and that it's kind of shaking people just enough that I think more and more people are willing to consider ideas outside of what they normally would have considered.
We cannot tell you how utterly thrilled we were. And I congratulate you on your wonderful podcast. I'm an avid listener. Thanks to Jordan.
Oh, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that.
Do you want to put in a plug for Cosmosis?
We created a docuseries. It's called Cosmosis, UFOs and a New Reality. It is available on Amazon Prime, Apple TV. If you're international, we've got it on Vimeo. If you're looking for a place to watch it, you can go to watchcosmosis.com and you'll find all sorts of links to platforms where you can find the show.
I've seen it. It's fantastic, top to bottom.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Kelly. We are
Thank you,
grateful
Kelly.
for what you're doing.
We hope to see you again.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
All right, folks, this is the aspirational version of Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs, with an AI correspondent, expert interviews, plenty of research, ruthless editing, and a professional sound mix to pull it all together. To do every episode this way will take more resources than we have as of this recording, so expect the next few episodes to be a bit shorter, a bit simpler, but hopefully still not boring. And in the meantime, if you want to help us reach our aspirations to produce the fancier version of this show, as well as get access to a bunch of bonus stuff, you can do that by subscribing on Substack. Thanks for being here. There's a lot more coming.